debated on this House floor on the transportation bill. We ought to have this debated. I urge my colleagues to vote no on the previous question so a little democracy can happen here on the House of Representatives.
The gentleman from Massachusetts has expired. The gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The situation we find ourselves in is certainly not ideal. I've been a strong proponent of a long-term reauthorization of federal transportation programs. Recently, reauthorizations haven't been that long-term, but that's more often than not also. The goal everyone is seeking is a long-term reauthorization. And I hear that the necessity of it from all transportation officials all over the country, including my own state and in my own district. But without the ability to plan over the course of several years, not 3 months, not 17 months, that lack of certainty of increase has increased the operating cost. It increases cost, uncertainty, and those are the death knell for critical infrastructure projects in this economy. As my colleagues have noted, transportation reauthorization bills are typically bipartisan affairs. Unfortunately, we don't have a bipartisan bicameral agreement on a viable long-term reauthorization yet. But the passage of this brief extension gives us the opportunity to once again bring both sides to the table to try to work out a collaborative effort, a collaborative solution to this problem. And I think that's what the American people want. It's our responsibility to make sure that happens, and this is the last chance to do it before the current legislation expires at midnight on Saturday. I ask my colleagues to join me in voting in favor of this rule. I yield back the balance of my time and move the previous question on the
question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. All those in favor signify so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, on that, I ask
from
for
Massachusetts.
the recorded vote.
Does the gentleman ask for the yeas and nays?
I do. I ask for the yeas and nays.
Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the chair will reduce to 5 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote on the question of adoption. This will be a 15-minute vote.
The House beginning their day working on the transportation bill, a short-term extension of the transportation bill, which would continue highway and transit projects getting underway this summer. Authorization runs out Saturday night. Short-term extensions were pulled from the schedule twice this week for lack of votes. Today, Republican leaders are trying a different approach, going for a simple majority to pass instead of two-thirds required to pass. Today's approach takes a couple more votes to get final passage. If the rule passes, that's the vote here, they'll get an hour of debate, no amendments, and a Democratic motion to recommit considered. Fawn Johnson with National Journal covering the House transportation debate. Why are House Republicans going with this 90-day extension of the transportation bill?
Well, that was their original proposal. It was actually something that was proposed by House Transportation Committee Chairman John Mica a couple of weeks ago because he thinks he needs that much time, considering that there's a couple of breaks coming up, to gather together the Republican caucus and explain to them his long-term proposal, which is a 5-year proposal to reauthorize the highway program. The reason why the Republicans are putting this one on the floor is because the Democrats have protested the 90-day extension, but they also claim they're not going to vote for it. So the Republicans just figured they might as well go with what they originally wanted.
Well, there's still a 60-day extension on today's schedule?
That's correct.
Are House Republicans planning to approve that one, too?
As I understand it, that proposal is being held as essentially a backup plan if for some reason they can't get the votes for a 90-day extension. It is, as with many things, as you're heading up towards a recess and also looking at the potential of a shutdown, you want to make sure you have all of the options available to you. So what had happened yesterday was that John Mica, who has been sponsoring both of these different kinds of extensions, actually has 2 versions available. The Republicans prefer the 90-day extension. They also say that they have the votes to pass it, so in theory, that 60-day extension probably won't see the light of day, but it's good to have a backup just in case.
The Democrats made a point about the Senate's 2-year transportation bill, so why won't the House Republicans bring that up as the Democrats are requesting?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. I think mainly, though, is that the Senate passed bill. It is, in fact, a bipartisan compromise. It was very carefully negotiated between the chairman of the the Environment and Public Works Committee, Barbara Boxer, who's quite liberal, and the ranking member, James Inhofe, who is quite conservative. But it does not go nearly as far as a lot of the Republicans, even those in the Senate sometimes, think that it should. John Mica, I think, would actually speak for a lot of the transportation community that they would like a much longer-term bill. He's proposing a 5-year bill. He would like to see a greater consolidation of the current programs that fund the highways and the transits in the Transportation Department. And also, the House members want to have their own stamp on this policy. It's a big policy. It only happens every 5 years. It's huge for the domestic spending levels in the country. And to ask them just to simply take up a Senate bill without putting their imprint on it is, to many of them, insulting.
Well, Congressman Mica wants a 5-year bill. They tried that a couple of weeks ago, and they didn't have the votes to bring it to the floor,
yeah,
right?
That's right. They're having a lot of trouble trying to figure out exactly how to move the bill. They've got some problems. The last time that they did this, they had greater the chairman of the Transportation Committee had a lot more leverage because he was able to put earmarks into the bill. But also they have a large group of new Republicans in the House who are not familiar with this process and who are just now beginning to learn how the legislation would affect their own districts. So it takes some time. Also, keep in mind that John Mica is proposing some things that some might consider fairly radical, and he's going to expect to get some pushback from it.
Well, assuming a short-term passage here in the House, what's it look like in the Senate for the short term, and then longer term? How do both bodies reach an agreement over a longer-term extension?
Well, the second question, I'm not even sure how to answer. But the first one I can tell you is I think that the indications from the Senate Democrats is that they're not going to stand in the way of an extension. Last summer, if you remember, there was a partial shutdown of the Federal Aviation Administration because lawmakers couldn't come to an agreement on a short-term extension, and that made everybody look bad. This one would be much worse because it's a much bigger program. It involves a lot more money. So nobody's saying this, in front of cameras publicly, but my guess is that the Senate will probably accede to whatever the House manages to come up with.
And the Senate would have to do that today or tomorrow.
They would have to do that today or tomorrow. It's entirely possible that someone will protest and just say, no, I'm not going to do that. But that would really put a lot of politicians at risk as they're trying to go home and actually drum up votes for the recess. In the longer term, it is a very good question to see just how far the members can come to some kind of agreement. I think that there is actually a willingness in the Congress to try and come up with something, but the Senate members, particularly Boxer and Senator Inhofe, say that they have compromised as much as they possibly can, and they don't see that they can go much farther. So stay tuned on that one.
Fawn Johnson, contributing correspondent for National Journal. Read her reporting at nationaljournal.com. Thanks for the update.
You're welcome.
And the House continues with this rule vote on the short-term 90-day extension of the transportation programs. This is a 15-minute vote. While this vote continues, we're going to take you over to one of the several congressional hearings we're covering today on Capitol Hill. This one, the House Financial Services Committee is hearing from Richard Cordray, the director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The hearing got underway about a half an hour ago.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. We'll close out the opening statements, and we'll go vote, come back as soon as we can. So I'd encourage the members to make your way to the floor.
Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I have another committee I have to go testify at, so I won't be back right away. It is not a sign of my lack of interest in the oversight of this agency.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Garrett, 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Cordray, the fact that you are here today is quite troubling, and yet another display that this administration's arrogance and flagrant disregard of the Constitution. The only check in Dodd-Frank of the CFPB is the position of the director requires Senate confirmation, and that this president ignored it. The only way this president gets around the confirmation process is to rely on the constitutional power to fill up vacancies that may arise during recess. But the problem is that this constitutional authority depends on the Senate being in recess. I suppose this president is an impatient man, but instead of waiting for a constitutionally significant recess of at least 3 days, this president declared the Senate in recess, and this was a unilateral infringement on the constitutional powers of this Congress to determine for itself when it's in recess. The recess appointment clause was adopted to ensure unfettered continuation of government. It's not here to provide an escape hatch for this president when he wants to avoid the Senate confirmation process. History tells us this. The Founding Fathers said so. Nothing more than a supplement for the purpose of establishing an auxiliary method of reappointments, they said, in case in which the general method was inadequate. This position was illegitimately occupied and has not only been granted broad and indefinable powers that will affect almost every aspect of American business, it also has been insulated from the congressional appropriation process and oversight. I say all that, Mr. Cordray, with nothing ill against you personally, but as a member of this Congress who has sworn an oath to support and defend the Constitution, I find that the method in which you were appointed extremely offensive and a violation of the highest law of this land, the Constitution of the United States. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. This time we'll stand in a brief recess.
Mr. Cicilline. Mr. Cicilline votes no. Mr. Schrader. Mr. Schrader votes no. Mr. Olver. Mr. Olver votes no.
On this vote, the yeas are 237, the nays are 178. The previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the rule. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. And without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman... The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on H.R. 4281.
Without objection, so ordered. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 600, I call up the bill H.R. 4281 to provide an extension of federal aid highway safety, motor carrier safety, transit, and other programs funded out of the Highway Trust Fund pending enactment of a multi-year law reauthorizing such programs, and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 4281, a bill to provide an extension of federal aid highway safety, motor carrier safety, transit, and other programs funded out of the Highway Trust Fund, pending enactment of a multi-year law reauthorizing such programs.
Pursuant to House Resolution 600, the bill is considered read. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Micah, and the gentleman from West Virginia, Mr. Rahal, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, first I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And I first have a unanimous consent request. I ask unanimous consent that the exchange of letters between the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure and the Committee on Ways and Means be included in the congressional record.
Is there objection? Seeing none, so ordered.
Thank you, and again yielding myself time.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker and my colleagues, we know why we're here. We are here to pass a responsible extension so that people across America can go to work, that we can finish a long-term transportation bill, and that we can be responsible stewards of the trust which the taxpayers and the citizens of America sent us here for. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Florida reserves his time. The gentleman from West Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as to make consent.
The gentleman from West Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the pending legislation before this body today at the 11th hour as a result of a torturous process, it's not been a process at all, but rather a series of stalled starts, retreats, and the failure by the Republican leadership to seize upon a reasonable solution to reauthorizing our nation's transportation surface programs. At first, the Speaker stated this was a jobs bill. Almost as soon as the words were out of his mouth, he countered himself by saying that investing in America's infrastructure has nothing to do with jobs at all. Nothing to do with jobs at all. What came about then was a scheme to produce a 5-year reauthorization bill, couple it with that universal House Republican answer to all ills, which is to open up ANWR to drilling, drill baby drill, and then attempt to pay for some of the proposal on the backs of working-class Americans. The surface transportation portion, H.R. 7, proposed to slash $15.8 billion in highway funding to the states, destroying 550,000 American family wage jobs over the coming years. Investment in roads, highways, and bridges would retrench in all but 5 states. The Republican leadership also proposed to shift public transit revenue to highways and then bail out transit with a one-time transfer of $40 billion from the general fund while robbing middle-class Americans to pay for the shuffle. This is an idea that would make even the most hardened con artist green with envy. It is a shell game. It's a shell game, but it has no place in the hallowed halls of Congress. It is a shell game, and it is a sham. But it was not Democrats who took this ill-advised proposal down. It was Republicans. Over the course of 6 weeks, they caucused, they corralled, and they contorted themselves in trying to obtain 218 votes to pass H.R. 7. And they could not. Which brings us to this week, when the Republican leadership decided to bring up a 90-day extension bill under suspension of the rules in the form of H.R. 4239. But when this legislation was called up on Tuesday, it was done so as a 60-day extension. The House debated this measure. I asked for a vote, and the vote was postponed. As far as I know, that request for a vote is still pending, even as we debate a different bill now. Then another curious thing happened. According to the publication Transportation Weekly yesterday, and I quote, after more discussion among themselves, Republican leaders order Micah to reintroduce the 60-day version of his extension as a standalone bill, which can then be considered by the Rules Committee, end quote. That bill is H.R. 4276. The Transportation Weekly article yesterday then noted, and I quote again, after still more discussion among themselves, Republican leaders order Micah to reintroduce the 90-day version of the extension as a standalone bill, which can then be considered by the Rules Committee as well, end quote. Confused? Anybody confused? That bill is now H.R. 4281, which we are currently debating. Who knows what we'll be debating the next hour. And yet, during the course of last and this week, the Republican leadership could have scheduled the bipartisan, non-controversial Senate-passed bill for consideration by this body. Could have been brought up at any time by the Speaker, passed by this body in a bipartisan fashion, signed into law. I make these points to illustrate the fast and loose means by which the Republican leadership has been dealing with an extremely serious matter. Instead of spinning their wheels in pursuit of the ill-conceived H.R. 7, which slashes investments in federal aid to highways by $15.8 billion from current levels at a time when more spending is needed to address structurally deficient bridges and maintain our highway system, reduces highway funding to all but 5 states. H.R. 7 guts America's commitment to transit by a sleight-of-hand move that siphons away a portion of gas taxes which are dedicated to transit funding and instead proposes to fund transit with general revenue funds, which is offset on the backs of workers. H.R. 7 contains a bogus pay-for by linking opening up ANWR and changes in OCS oil and gas leasing, which only produced $4.3 billion over a 10-year period. H.R. 7 continues to send American dollars and jobs overseas through the inclusion of a Buy America Light requirement. It does not fully cover transit rolling stock, Amtrak, and the Federal Railroad Loan Program, while failing to crack down on DOT's waiver authority. H.R. 7 places a roadblock on public participation in reviewing transportation projects by limiting and, in certain cases, outright waiving NEPA. And H.R. 7 eliminates OSHA protections for hazmat workers and allows bad actors to continue to receive hazmat compliance exemptions. So this body could have considered and passed the other body's bipartisan bill, which passed that body by a vote of 74 to 22. That's half of the Republican members in the other body. And we know how difficult it is to get that other body to get 60 votes to cut off debate on any resolution or any bill. Even one saying I love mother would be hard to pass in that other body. Yet for a transportation bill, they came up with 72 votes. That bill continues current funding levels, sustaining approximately 1.9 million jobs. The states will receive $3.8 billion more in highway construction funding than H.R. 7 over the course of 2 years. The Senate bipartisan bill eliminates many of the gaping loopholes in current law by American requirements, loopholes that are being exploited by foreign competitors like China, who are stealing American jobs. And the Senate bipartisan bill does not contain poison pills like H.R. 7, such as provisions to strip OSHA requirements for hazmat workers and efforts to finance highway constructions on the back of middle-class workers. I would note, Mr. Speaker, that we have tried by every means available to us on this side of the aisle to have the Senate-passed bill brought up for consideration in the House, and not just through procedural motions. Yesterday, Representatives DeFazio, Corrine Brown, Tim Bishop, and myself submitted that measure to the Rules Committee, asking them to make it an order as an amendment to the pending measure so we could vote on it today. We were denied. Instead, we are on the floor today with a Republican leadership proposal to kick the can down the road for another 90 days so they can try to convince their conference to support something they have not been able to do over the last 6 weeks. The fact of the matter is, we need to be investing more. We need to be investing more, not less, if we are to keep pace with China, India, and our other international competitors. Today, China spends 9% of its GDP per year on infrastructure. India spends 5%. The U.S. only invests 1.9%. While our competitors are moving forward, the inability of the Republican leadership to reach out across party lines to House Democrats to address this bill is leaving America stuck in a ditch, putting American businesses at a disadvantage with companies around the world. In 2008, a Blue Ribbon Commission established as a result of the last multi-year surface transportation bill reported that the federal government must invest a minimum of $62 billion a year just to maintain the nation's roads and bridges in their present inadequate condition. This bill comes nowhere close to that. Instead, it leads America down the opposite path. President Lyndon B. Johnson once said, in large measure, America's history is a history of her transportation. I say let us seize the moment to move forward without procedural gimmicks, without partisan brinksmanship, and do what is right for America, for the American worker, for American families, and for America values. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from West Virginia reserves his time. The gentleman from
Mr.
Florida.
Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds, and then 2 minutes I would like to yield to the chair of the Highway Subcommittee. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, let's just deal with the facts, and I'd ask unanimous consent that this chart or the information therein be included in the record.
Without objection. So
the fact is that the Democrats had 6 amendments, 1 month, 1.5 months, 2.5 months, 1 month, 9 months, 2 months. When they controlled the House of Representatives, the Senate, by huge majorities, and the White House, they couldn't even get it to committee. They could not get it to committee. These are the facts. I yield now to
The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding me this time. And, Mr. Speaker, let me just say this. Chairman Micah has performed great leadership of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and he's tried in every way possible to work with everybody he possibly could. His task has been made much more difficult by the rule prohibiting earmarks, and as he just mentioned, the other side couldn't bring a bill out of committee and to this floor, a highway bill, in the last Congress when they controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House, and still allowed earmarks. And so we're in a very difficult situation at this point, and that's why we are here today asking for this 90-day extension. H.R. 4281 extends the surface transportation programs through June 30th at funding levels consistent with the fiscal year 2012 transportation appropriations bill passed in November. This extension is clean and does not add any policy provisions. Without this extension, the highway, transit, and highway safety programs are set to expire this Saturday. This legislation will allow these programs to continue to operate as the spring construction season kicks off. If Congress fails to pass this extension by Saturday, it will cost the Highway Trust Fund about $1 billion a week in lost revenue and put the brakes on 134,000 highway projects and 5,700 transit projects across the nation. States that seek to be reimbursed for their federal aid highway and transit projects would be unable to receive federal funds for the work they have completed. The Federal Highway Administration would furlough 3,500 of their employees and work on environmental permits and project approvals for new construction projects would come to a screeching halt. Over 280,000 construction workers, Mr. Speaker, working on highway and bridge projects today could lose their jobs if Congress cannot pass this extension. This country simply cannot afford a loss of such a magnitude during our tenuous road to economic recovery. Time magazine has a cover article this week describing our recovery as the wimpy recovery, and it's based primarily on pent-up demand. We need this to pass this extension and so that we can work towards completing and finalizing H.R. 7, our long-term authorization reform bill. I yield back.
The gentleman from Tennessee has expired. The gentleman from West Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, yield at this time 4 minutes to the gentleman from Oregon, the distinguished ranking member on our subcommittee on highways and transit, Mr. DeFazio.
For 4 minutes.
This could or should be the most important jobs-creating bill in America, investing in our nation's infrastructure, making our nation more competitive in the international economy, more efficiently moving goods and people. The current system, a legacy of the 1950s, is falling apart. Now, the Republicans are telling us that this 90-day extension will be good for America. It will not be good for America because we have a better option before us. A bill passed the United States Senate, bipartisan bill, with 22 Republican senators, half the Republican senators, supporting that bill, which would give us more funding without creating deficit and create more jobs than their pie-in-the-sky bill, H.R. 7, which they can't even get out of their own caucus here, because their own caucus is split. There are a number of Republicans who do not believe we should have a national transportation system. They want to devolve it back to the states, go back to pre-1950s. The Speaker was forced to say to his caucus, we're not making the claim that spending taxpayer money on transportation projects creates jobs. We don't make that claim. We won't make that claim. What makes this a jobs bill is it removes government barriers that are getting in the way of economic growth. Well, that's not what all the people engaged in rebuilding the nation's infrastructure think. They think investment equals jobs. And if we do this 90-day extension, the Association of General Contractors says that states will cut back to 50 to 40% of their planned projects because of the uncertainty created by this 90-day extension. We're going to lose half of the proposed projects this construction season around America, tens of thousands of jobs, needed investment, because they got a bunch of bozos in their caucus who don't believe we should have a national transportation system. They're fighting among themselves. Give us a vote. Let us vote on the Senate bill. It doesn't create deficit, It does create jobs. It does give us the investment we need. The gentleman who spoke just before me, the gentleman from Tennessee, who is a good friend, under the bill they're trying to pry out of their caucus, which the Secretary of Transportation called the worst transportation bill in history. And by the way, the Secretary is a Republican and served in this House for more than a decade. He says it's the worst bill ever in terms of policy and lack of investment. In the case of the gentleman from Tennessee, their H.R. 7, if they could get it out of caucus, and they can't, would cost his state $444 million over 5 years. Lost investment, $444 million. That's more than 10,000 jobs lost. We have an opportunity today to take up a 2-year bill, provide the certainty, not only for construction jobs, for engineering jobs, for people who manufacture construction equipment, for people with Made in America requirements who construct transportation equipment, our buses, our light rail, our streetcars, all the things that need building and replacing just for the existing system, let alone beginning to have a vision of building out a 21st century system. Our competitor nations around the world are doing it, and they're so dyspeptic on their side, they're arguing over whether or not the federal government should be involved in transportation. That's nuts. We settled that debate 60 years ago when Dwight David Eisenhower said this doesn't work. We have states building turnpikes that end in farmers' fields because the adjoining state couldn't afford to build their section of the turnpike. He said we need a coordinated national transportation policy. We have an opportunity to improve on the one we have today by passing the Senate bill. It does do some streamlining. It does do things that will help us spend the money more efficiently. And it maintains current levels of spending instead of reductions. And it does not have the uncertainty of a 98-day bill that's going to cost us half of the proposed projects this construction season. Give us that chance. Let us have that vote. What are you afraid of? You afraid it might pass?
Time of the gentleman's expired. The gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds.
The gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, I don't think it's appropriate that members of my conference be referred to as bozos. I think that we have dedicated Americans, ladies and gentlemen, who serve this country and the Congress well. The gentleman who just spoke on September 23rd, 2009 said, don't play politics with investments in our infrastructure, don't play politics with the economy, don't play politics with people's jobs, don't bring America to a screeching halt on October 1st and walk away from your obligation to extend this program. Also, Mr. Speaker, yielding myself 15 additional seconds, that this was an attempt by the other side when they controlled the House in huge numbers. They could not pass that extension, nor could they pass, I'm told, any extension freestanding. I yield back the balance, or I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Florida reserves his time. The gentleman from West Virginia.
I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Oregon.
The gentleman recognized for 30 seconds.
I still agree with that quote. We shouldn't play politics. It's never been a partisan issue. You've made it into a partisan issue. And that quote was when you were opposing a 90-day extension, and I was saying don't play politics by opposing a 90-day extension at that point in time. But we're too far down the road, and we didn't have an alternative then. We have an alternative now. Pass the Senate bill.
Chair will remind members to address their remarks to the chair. The gentleman from Florida.
I'll continue to reserve.
The gentleman continues to reserve his time. The gentleman from West Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, I'm honored to yield 2 minutes to the distinguished ranking member on the House Education and Workforce Committee, the gentleman from California, Mr. Miller.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, Americans all over the country know that our economy is improving, that the unemployed number is coming down, people are finding jobs, small businesses are doing better, but it's a very fragile recovery. And this infrastructure bill that is waiting in the Senate, that was passed 74-22, is key to continuing the economic growth going in this country for businesses, for families, for people seeking jobs that have been laid off for a very long time. But now what we see here today is a conscious decision, because rather than give the Obama administration and President Obama any help with the continuing growth in the economy, which these jobs would mean if we had a long-term extension of the highway bill for all across America, they've decided that they'll do a short-term extension. This is a party that has complained about uncertainty in the economy, uncertainty in the business community. With a 90-day extension, cities, counties, and state governments are going to have to rethink what they contract for. With a 90-day extension, and there's those in their leadership that have already said, and then we'll need another 90 days. This construction season will be gone for equipment manufacturers, for engineers, for construction workers, all across the country, in our local communities that are in desperate need of an infrastructure improvement. But they've made a decision that they're going to fight President Obama with the jobs that belong to middle-class Americans all across the country. Jobs that people need today to feed their families. They've made a decision. Inject uncertainty. Those contracts, those jobs won't be let. And that will somehow be a victory for the Republicans in the House, but it'll be a disaster for American families, for American workers, and for American businesses. This kind of cold-blooded political calculation to use the jobs of American working people as political cannon fodder for your agenda to defeat the Obama administration is outrageous. It should be rejected by your party, and it should be rejected by my party. Because when you put American people's lives and their well-being and their family income and the economic growth in our community on the line for this kind of partisanship, you should stop it. You should stop it.
Time of the gentleman from California has expired.
Because this is a critical issue for the American people, for their families, for their livelihood.
The gentleman from California is no longer recognized. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida.
A bipartisan bill.
I yield the gentleman another 30 seconds.
The gentleman from Florida. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker.
From Florida.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to yield at this time to the chair of the Rail Subcommittee, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Schuster, 2 minutes.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish the gentleman from California would have showed that kind of passion when the stimulus bill was passed two years ago and come to the floor and said that stimulus bill should be an infrastructure bill. And there was only a very, very small portion, I think about $68 billion of that $800 billion stimulus package that went to the infrastructure of this country. Where was the gentleman when that outrage was happening? If you want a real stimulation, which we believe this stimulates the economy, this helps put concrete on our roads and repairs our bridges and puts people to work, this bill will do that, a 5-year bill. An 18-month bill is not going to put any kind of certainty out there. I correct myself. It will create certainty, and the certainty is that it will bankrupt the trust fund in less than 2 years. Our bill that we've been trying to pass here, a 5-year bill, that's what the people back in the States want. The gentleman from Oregon, I'm surprised, who's been a longtime member of the T&I committee, knows that a long-term transportation bill is better for the states. It's better for the folks that build roads and employ people, and that's what we need here, and that's what we're trying to get at.
Would the gentleman
this
yield?
90-day extension, I will not yield. I know the gentleman has plenty of time. He can respond on his time. This is a clean extension. It gives us the time to work a 5-year bill, which, as I said, members on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee know that a 5-year bill is something that would put certainty out there to the folks that in the states, the folks that are going to buy trucks, are going to hire people, are going to expand their businesses to build and rebuild these bridges and roads throughout the country. It doesn't make any sense to do an 18-month extension is basically what the Senate does, and along the way bankrupting the trust fund. And our bill, 5-year bill, has significant reforms in it. Gentlemen, yield 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
The gentleman's recognized for 30
has
seconds.
Significant reforms in it that will shorten the time frame to build a highway. We all sit around here and we talk about streamlining government. That's what this bill does, eliminating departments and consolidating departments in the transportation and shortening the timeline from 14 to 15 years to 7 to 8 years. Now, it's tough to quantify the savings, but we all know time is money. And all of us have seen these projects that go on year after year. They balloon, they cost overruns. This bill is going to solve a lot of those problems. So we need to pass the 90-day extension to be able to continue work on a real solution to our infrastructure.
Time of the gentleman's expired. The gentleman from West Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, I would remind the gentleman from Pennsylvania the bill that he is promoting, H.R. 7, means to his home state of Pennsylvania a cut of $948 million. It destroys some 32,983 good-paying jobs. And for fiscal year 2016, for the state of Pennsylvania, the level of funding will be less than that for fiscal year 2004. That's what H.R. 7 would mean to the gentleman's home state of Pennsylvania. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to. He would not yield to me. I will not yield to you. I'm proud to yield 3 minutes now to the gentleman from Missouri, a valued member of our committee, Mr. Carnahan.
The gentleman's recognized from Missouri is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong opposition to yet another lame, short-sighted extension of our surface transportation system, and to thank Nick Rahal and Peter DeFazio for their staunch support of a real transportation jobs bill. This kick-the-can down the road extension fails. It fails to make progress rebuilding America just at the time when our construction season is starting off this year. Our states, our local governments need certainty to invest, to plan, to build America's infrastructure. And this ninth short-term extension only extends uncertainty this Congress has repeatedly created. In a bipartisan fashion, by a vote of 74 to 22, rare in the Senate these days, they passed a responsible 2-year, 2 million jobs bill that is a better path for the American people and the economy. This includes an estimated 36,500 jobs in my home state of Missouri. The construction sector, and especially our building trades, have been particularly hard hit by this recession, with 1.9 million jobs lost at the depth of the recession. Currently, there are 1.4 million unemployed construction workers. Let's put them back to work. I sit on the Transportation Committee where 6 weeks ago the Republican majority passed out a completely partisan transportation bill for the first time in history. Their bill would kill over 500,000 jobs and cut investments in 45 states and the District of Columbia, and was dead on arrival in this House. So it's no surprise that here, 6 weeks later, we've not seen any action on the floor because there's no support for their job-killing proposal, and now we're delaying again with yet another extension instead of taking up a true compromise passed by our colleagues in the Senate. I'm proud to be an original co-sponsor when the Senate bill was introduced in the House, H.R. 14, and it's time the House take up that bill, that bipartisan bill. Let's pass it. Let's send it to the President. Infrastructure is a national and urgent priority, and this body needs to start treating it that way. Infrastructure is one of the few areas where virtually everyone, except the isolated and out-of-touch Republican majority, agrees on what we need to do. From the Chamber of Commerce to the AFL-CIO to everyone's transportation leaders back home. Let's pass this bipartisan bill. Let's send it to the President's desk before the current transportation programs expire. It will bring certainty that state and local governments need, that our construction industry, that our building trades are yearning for. They're hungry for. They are hungry to go back to work. I call on my colleagues to reject yet another short-term extension. Pass H.R. 14, a 2-year, $2 million jobs bill to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure and put Americans back to work.
Time of the gentleman is expired. The gentleman from Florida.
I yield 15 seconds to Mr. Schuster.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, gentlemen. I dispute the gentleman from West Virginia's figures. Are we going to spend less? Yes, quite possibly, but we have to live within our means. And by streamlining, I believe we'll spend that money out and we'll create more jobs by streamlining.
Would gentleman yield? What are you waiting for? Bring it up then. Bring up H.R. 7.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I'll
gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from West Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New York at this time, valued member of our committee and the sponsor of H.R. 14, the other body's bipartisan transportation bill, which is twice as good as H.R. 7.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, let me see if I have this right. Our Republican colleagues are telling us that we should forget about the 15 months that have passed since they started crafting the highway bill. They're telling us we should forget about the last 6 weeks, during which time their bill, H.R. 7, imploded, and the bipartisan MAP 21 bill passed the Senate with overwhelming bipartisan support. Now they're telling the American people that they simply need 3 additional months to find the money and shape a policy, an effort that thus far has eluded them, that can garner a majority of votes in the House and overcome the 60-vote threshold in the Senate and be signed by the President of the United States. It gets better. On the very same day that they make this outrageous argument, they will vote for a Republican budget that slashes investment in transportation infrastructure by 46%. 46% reduction in investment in infrastructure. Now, if they're serious about this vote, if they're serious about seeing this destructive level of funding enacted into law, how can we take them seriously when they talk about a 5-year bill? They talk about certainty. How can we give the American people or the construction industry or construction workers certainty when they say just give us 90 more days and we'll craft a 5-year bill, but in the meantime we want to cut highway funding by 46%? These don't line up. No reasonable person can take that seriously. And to make it even worse, at the end of today, we're going to adjourn the House for 2 weeks, asking for a 90-day extension. But the first 2 weeks of that 90-day extension, they're going to adjourn the House and go home. And they're going to do that while construction workers are wondering where their next paycheck is coming from. They're wondering how they're going to be able to provide for their families. This is unconscionable. If Republicans want 90 more days, we should stay here and work through the issues with the bipartisan Senate bill, MAP 21, H.R. 14 here in the House as the basis for these discussions. We know we can get it through the Senate, and I'm confident that if Republicans are released by their leadership to vote for it, they'll vote for it here in the House. Let's pass H.R. 14. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Continuing to reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from West Virginia.
May I have a time check, please, Madam?